idea of the Labour project now appears to be self-harm. James Price is here. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
One of the things I think that gives this all away, and we'll show it later on, but all of the various different sort of news organisations yesterday were trying to make sense of the new resetted, Keir Starmer government, and they were trying to draw sort of, Venn diagrams, different sort of flow charts, all sorts of different kind of, graphic representations of how one issue is reconnected to another, and it's so confusing. It looks ridiculous. It looks like some kind of maze created by a madman. Because there's no logic to any of it.
No, you're absolutely right. It is extraordinary. And the thing is that the Labour Party had, 14 years in opposition to work these sorts of things out.
Yeah.
There's a reasonable tradition of kind of left-wing activity in this country. I don't like almost any of it, but there are some ideas they could have drawn on. Blair, whatever you thought about him, had a plan. He got in there and he enacted a lot of it. And actually, frankly, Blair was probably a lot more right-wing than what the Tories have been in recent years.
He was more right-wing than David Cameron,
absolutely,
that's for sure.
I think so. If you look at some of the stuff that Tony Blair was getting away with saying back in the noughties, compared to what you get in trouble for even thinking today. So there was a chance for them to have got a decent plan ready for government, but now you're hearing a lot of whispers coming out of the civil service that says, well, they got into government and they said, what should we do now to the civil service?
Right.
And the civil service is saying, well, that's for you to tell us.
Right.
Oh, well, we thought we'd listen to you. So you've got two groups, the two probably least efficient groups in the country, sitting there waiting for the other to tell them what to do so that they can block the other from doing it.
And then when they did tell them and said, why don't you do this, instead of going which every other government had done in the past sort of 15, 20 years, they said, no, we're not doing that. They were like, oh, OK, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So being led around by the nose by the civil servants. So the Treasury has kiboshed all the sort of budget ideas that they had and made them produce one of the worst budgets of all time, which everybody hates and which James Dyson this morning is calling self-harm. Then they went off and did their sort of net zero stuff, which has now all been rowed back. Miliband is now humiliated. The economy and the growth of it to be the leader of the G7, that's gone. And I don't really know what yesterday was all about. Do you?
It's very peculiar, isn't it? It looks like one of those things that has been agreed by a committee.
Yes.
I think there have only ever been the Declaration of Independence and the King James Bible are probably the two documents that have been written by a committee that have ever been successful.
Right.
And this is the problem. You've got this kind of hodgepodge. What was it you got here again in the mail? 3 foundations and 5 missions and a partridge in a pear tree. And
well,
all
I was saying this
nonsense.
yesterday. I can't remember if it's a mission, if it's a pledge, if it's a promise.
Well, it's definitely not a pledge or a promise.
No.
Because that implies you actually have to do it.
Right.
It's a sort of, these are broad aspirations.
And it's all terribly nebulous, isn't it? There's nothing really to it. This idea that, we're going to keep your streets safe. Well, how are you going to do that? We're going to get community policemen. We're going to give you somebody to ring when you see something bad. Can you imagine trying to get hold of this one person, a community policeman, who's going to be presumably some AI bot that you get to leave a message for, who's then going to do hardly anything about it? It is absolutely extraordinary. Andrew Neil has written about it this morning and said that it's one of the worst, episodes of government that anybody has ever seen. They're not just rudderless, they're clueless and completely and utterly kind of without any ideas.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that it comes from the kind of what a philosopher might call it the theory of change. How are you going to change these things? How are you going to make the country better? Let alone what do you actually want to do with it? The Conservatives, my party, for all their many, 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 many faults, at least had some people in there who had some idea of what they wanted to do for the country. And therefore they were at least fighting against a system that didn't want to let them do anything. At this point, as you say, Labour don't have any idea of what they actually want to do, and they've also got no way of doing any of it at all. Until you realise that the British state is like the sort of final seconds of a game of Tetris, where you're desperately trying to move those little pieces around, and you've got no space to do it, because everything has been so gummed up. That's what we've got to now. That's why you've got the ECHR, you've got all this stupid legislation, natural England that says you can't ever build anything because you might kill a newt or whatever it is. Until you strip some of that stuff away and give yourself the freedom to move, you're never going to achieve any of these missions or anything else.
He claims that he's going to do that. So Keir Starmer has vowed to stop housing and infrastructure being held to ransom by NIMBYs and environmentalists and will push through reform of Britain's ruinous planning system. That actually doesn't sound very Labour-like, does it? That sounds like a Tory Prime Minister. So all of his apparatchiks will be sitting there thinking, what is going on? But here's the plan, right? And I'll just read you these 5 points. Or is it 6? 1, 2, 3. It's actually 6 points, but they keep calling it 5. I don't know why. Raise living standards so you have more money in your pocket. No, I don't think so. 2, build 1.5 million homes so there are decent, affordable homes in your area. Well, that's years away, right? End hospital backlogs to meet the NHS standard of 92% of elective treatments within 18 weeks. We talked about this yesterday. That's not until 2029. So if you are suffering from any kind of ill and you need an operation, I'm afraid you'll have to wait 5 years before you wait another 18 weeks. Put more police on the beat so you feel safer in your community? Probably not. Give children the best start in life so that every child has the opportunity to succeed. You might as well do the old Bill Clinton line, you know, make poverty history.
Yeah.
OK, then. Everybody goes, yeah, great idea, brilliant. How are you going to do it? I don't know.
Right.
And then finally, secure homegrown energy so bill payers are protected. These are the same bill payers whose prices have risen twice since September under the new Labour government.
Right. Well, again, what they're actually doing is just saying all of the things they are not currently doing and can't currently do. Right. And what Starmer seems to have thought is that he'll walk in, he'll say some nice things, and it will just happen.
Yeah.
In reality, because I've worked in a lot of these departments, you pull that lever, you try and get something done, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then you start following through the mechanism down. And it'll be people saying no, there'll be people in the civil service probably fibbing to you.
Yes.
Because they don't want to do it, because they don't quite agree with it.
Yeah.
And then even if you get past that, you've got so many stages you've got to do. So take that idea about stopping the NIMBYs, right?
Yeah.
OK, that sounds good. Like, I definitely think we need to build loads more houses.
Yeah.
Housing is way too expensive. Are you going to repeal the 1947 Town and Country Planning Act, which is a big Clement Attlee Labour piece of legislation that's preventing this? They're not going to do that, obviously. Are they going to get rid of all these unaccountable, unelected quangos and these faceless bureaucrats who say, no, you can't build anything there because the lesser spotted newts? Or the environmentalists.
Right.
Are you going to say to do that? No, they're not going to do that.
No.
So already it's a non-starter.
It's already a busted flush. Right. Absolutely right. Let's have a look at Starmer talking. I know it's going to be funny for you, and I don't mean to make you spit your cornflakes out already this morning, 12 minutes past 6. Here he is on building the foundations.
Fixing the foundations is like finding damp in your wall. You can paint over it and get the hairdryer out and dry it. All done that. Hope it goes away. Or you can strip it out, rip out the plaster and deal with the problem once and for all.
He's actually used a hairdryer on his walls. This man is running the country. You can put a hairdryer on the damp. Who's ever done that? I'm sorry, I mean, am I the only person that's never done that? I've never done that.
No, I tried to get the hairdryer on the Spaniel last night after I'd given him a bath, but that wasn't very successful either.
That's more difficult because you've got a moving target there. Let's have a look at the cabinet, filled with the joys of watching the great leader. Look at them. I mean, have you ever seen, they look like the condemned front bench of some kind of, you know, trial that they've all been found guilty of. You know, you will now be sent down for the rest of your life. You know, there's Miliband, Yvette Cooper, Wes Streeting, is that Bridget Phillipson? Lisa Nandy. Where's Rachel?
Well, wonderfully, she's just off to the side then. When you watch the video of it, anybody who watched it at home, there's a lovely moment where Rachel Reeves sort of looks over and catches the camera with her eyes. It's like a scene out of The Office.
Right.
And she must realise how farcical it looks as well.
This looks ridiculous, yeah. I mean, they can't be enjoying it. Let's have a look at what George Lazenby looks like next to Keir Starmer. There he is. He actually looks a lot more stylish than Keir Starmer, but he was, of course, the famously unbond Bond, wasn't he? I mean, I can't remember if you're a Bond fan.
Oh, yeah.
You are.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you might like Roger Moore, you might like Pierce Brosnan, you might like Daniel Craig, you might like Sean Connery. Nobody likes George Lazenby. Nobody ever says George Lazenby was a good Bond.
I mean, looking at him now, I feel this is a pretty harsh comparison.
You take him as Prime Minister at this point.
Well, exactly. At least, you know, he actually believed that he was on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure who Starmer thinks he's working for.
Starmer with the hairdryer. We've got this image now of Starmer with a hairdryer firing at the wall, trying to clear up the damp, while Lady Starmer in the background is going, oh, just stop it, you idiot.
Well, of course, Starmer famously said that he doesn't dream.
No.
He doesn't have a favourite novel.
No.
He doesn't have a favourite anything else.
Doesn't have a favourite poem.
No, exactly. He doesn't seem to do anything. So maybe that's what he does for fun, is just put the hairdryer on the wall.
Yeah, maybe put the hairdryer on the wall to liven up the weekend. This from Sean in Norfolk. Good morning, Mike. Yesterday's announcement at Pinewood Studios and a reference to James Bond. It's more like a carry-on film. Carry On Dick 2.0. Sharon says, why are we still talking about this boring, useless man, Starmer? And Bill says this, Starmer's 90-minute borathon should be condensed, processed and manufactured into a small tablet and issued via the NHS to all those poor people suffering from insomnia. It works a treat. I was fast asleep within 6 minutes. Thank you, Sir Keir. Well, we can talk about other things, including, of course, the state of the Guardian. We made fun of them yesterday because they've got a very small paper today because they're still on strike. But of course, the scabs of the left wing are still going in to produce the paper, and they're so frightened of being outed by their brethren that they're not giving their names on the story. So the front page today is written by Guardian staff and agencies, and then further down on the page, Guardian staff again, but they're carrying this nonsensical story about the NHS facing a quademic of emergencies as winter bites. I mean, you could hold that up and you could have written that headline literally every year for the last 40
2000,
years,
yeah.
right? Ever since the time began, the NHS faces another crisis because it's, guess what? Winter!
Yeah, exactly right.
But the main reason they're calling this a quademic is because they're, of course, saying that not enough people have been vaccinated against flu, and there's more people in hospital now with flu than there's ever been. But, of course, it's a tiny, tiny minority of the people who are actually in hospital for all sorts of other things.
Yeah, of course. I know, by the way, before we even talk about that a newspaper...
Why do they keep trying to frighten people?
Well, of course, but for a newspaper with such impeccable left-wing credentials that is going on strike, doesn't stop them advertising an extremely fancy, expensive perfume on the back page to help them get the money in.
Yeah, Chanel,
retails at hundreds of pounds.
Oh, yeah, that's not very left-wing, is it?
Look at that. Very, very
perfumes are, of course, available for Christmas. But, yeah, it is hilarious.
Very man of the people.
They never fail to make me smile.